There we go. There we go. Welcome, everyone. We are live on a Thursday. This is strange. This is a new world for me. Um, I'm excited about today. And the reason I'm excited about today is because today is a 100% conlanging live stream, which is just a ton of fun. And I've been scheming and I've been planning. But, well, I'll show you what I've been scheming once we get into the thick of it. But otherwise, how are you? You know, I see. Oh, we got 5 people in here already. How are you doing? It's Thursday. This is great. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. We're gonna try and do two main things today. One, I'm stuck on this proto-language. I don't know why. I can't get off of it. We're gonna fix the verbal system in the proto-language. I've had a lot of thoughts about it. We have some mysteries we need to sort out, and I really want to make this more of an SOV language. And I also want to sort out the nominal system. There's not as much to do there. I would like to put together a nice case system with some cool grammaticalization pathways coming in. And yeah, I think that should probably do the job for us. The other thing I want to do is work out. If you've been keeping up with this Conlang with me series, you may have noticed that there's this strange alternation we see in certain morphemes between schwa and a, and I've been wanting to make these this alternation come from somewhere, and I think I've got a good idea as to how to do it. Oh, excellent. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, the Conlang streams hold a very special place in my heart too. Okay. All right. So I think I'm getting the technical all clear from Lucy. Thank you, Lucy. So I think without too much further ado, let's jump in. So I'm going to scoot over to the side here. And yeah, how about that? You can see I have my schwa and my labialization diacritic here, so that I don't have to keep going off onto the IPA keyboard. Okay. So yeah, this is the gist of what I want to talk about today. I've been doing a little bit of prep. No, I haven't thought anything through yet. But what I did was, let's start, I guess, with verbs. What I did was I looked up, there's a suggestion a while back to look into some classical Japanese. And I looked into some classical Japanese, very, very much skimming the surface. But what I found was, in classical Japanese and in modern Japanese as well, you have a verbal system in which you have different verb stems. And I've more or less stolen this from the classical Japanese verbal system. You have different verbal stems which take different verbal endings. Let me explain this better. You have different verbal endings which encode different meanings, like past tense, negation, different kinds of things that we would express using conjunctions in English. So like a concessive, although such and such is true, whatever. And each one of these things is expressed as a suffix. But what's interesting is the suffixes themselves suffix to different verbal stems. And so I've taken a kind of a schematic view of the classical Japanese system, and I've slotted in some of the endings that we have. So we have our past tense marker ta, which goes into the past. Our conditional to. Conditional to is just my shorthand form for saying counterfactual conditional. So if something were the case, which is not actually the case, but if it were the case, then something else would follow from that. We have the attributive form, which is what we've been calling the relative form. So this it translates to which or who. We have the substantive form, which is our mysterious suffix khakwa that we've been using to nominalize things. We have various lexicalized nominalizations using khakwa, like anatochakwa, which means home, which comes from this root anato, which means to enclose, and then this khakwa suffix. So we've got that. We've got the conditional one, which is used for indicative conditionals. So things like, if I am standing here, I am not on the top of a building. So these are not counterfactual conditionals. It can also be used for when, because, given that. Then we have the concessive, which I mentioned already, but although, despite, good ways of translating that. So I've slotted in the morphology that we have now. But what I'd like to do is to use this idea that we have different verbal stems, and the endings select for different verbal stems. And so the big idea is that this can give us a way to kind of derive these alternations that we see. Because what if in pre-protocol, long time ago, we had, say the difference between verb stem A and verb stem B was a stress shift. And under certain circumstances, okay, let's make this a little less abstract. So let's say let's take our verb to do, which we have as y or ya. So say we have this form, and let's just say we have this underlying form, which we'll write with a capital A. So we don't know if this vowel is going to show up as a or schwa. So we'll write it with just a capital A. And in the terminal form, well, this is a monosyllabic root. So this will get us our way in. Then we'll have to see how it develops with polysyllabic roots. So say our rule is that whenever a is stressed, it surfaces as, whenever this underspecified vowel a, capital A, we can't call a really, capital A is stressed, then it surfaces as a. So let's just use some cheesy pseudo phonological rules there. And whenever a is unstressed, it shows up as schwa. Okay, so this is the beginning of our solution. This is just here because I needed a place to write it. I'll get rid of it later. So say then that terminal forms are always stressed on the first syllable or the last syllable. I don't know. Maybe they're always stressed on the first syllable, let's say. So the form would be initial stress. And so we would see ya. But then say the conjunctive form is exactly the same as the terminal form. And conjunctive is just the name that I stole from classical Japanese, or at least the translation of the name used in classical Japanese. I'm just going to probably call it verb stem B in the future, but it's generally used to connect clauses. Say this has final stress, and then say we find that for whatever reason, the past tense attaches to verb stem B. The past tense has the underlying form. So we have to do, and we have the past tense form also has an underlying form of, I don't know why my keyboard is not liking that, ta, with this underspecified A. So then when we affix this past tense form to the verb, this is kind of intricate, we get y ta, because this always shows up in the because the past tense form always attaches to stem B, and stem B has word final stress. So that's the kind of idea. This can give us this allomorphy between ya and y, this alternation that we see. So we have ya in the terminal form, yata in the conjunctive form with this past tense suffix. Okay, so then this is a way forward to give us our alternation, not only between ya and ya, but also between ta and ta. But we don't quite have enough to do it yet. So say there are two kinds of verbs in this language. There are verbs for whom this pattern holds, and then there are verbs for whom this pattern does not hold. So maybe we could call this ya form a weak verb because it takes its stress from the stem stress pattern. So we have ya, yata. But then say we have another verb. Let's find a verb. Let's say afi. To be thus, or to be so. So for these verbs, a weak verb, and for these verbs, these have we call it lexically specified stress. What does that mean? That means that the stress is part of the representation of the root in pre-protocol. And so the stress does not alter when it's put into different stem forms. So it's always going to show up as afi. So afi, and in the past tense, afita. And so that's how we derive the stem allomorphy and the affix allomorphy. Okay. I think that will be the general shape of the solution to our problem, of where did all these hkwa, hkwa, ta, ta, y, ya alternations come from. We have these strong stems which have a fixed stress, and we have these weak stems which have a variable stress. In pre-protocol, I want to just make that very clear that this does not hold of the of protocol, of the language that we have reconstructed. This is going back via internal reconstruction to an even earlier form of the language in which this happened. And so that's what gives us these patterns of a versus schwa. Okay, I'm going to stop and survey the landscape from here. And the first step of that is me hydrating. So the grammaticalization pathway of this ta suffix, that's an interesting question. Off the top of my head, I can't think of too many pathways for a past tense. Maybe something like cross or surpass. That could perhaps work. I'd have to check that. But really, it would be cool if we could have everything come eventually from some lexical root. So a lexical root would be something that's not a functional root, not like a past tense marker that doesn't have any meaning other than this past tenseness, but it was some more specific, like a noun or a verb with fuller content. So we can explore that. But there's also another question that comes to mind when I think about these. This area of research that tries to show how functional morphemes, how grammatical morphemes come into being from lexical morphemes is called grammaticalization, or that's the phenomenon. And so the study of that is called grammaticalization theory. So the thing that always puzzles me about that is that it's true that you can sort of reconstruct earlier stages of the language often, and so you can see these diachronic pathways whereby lexical morphemes become functional morphemes over time. But is there like some sort of a year zero where everything was lexical? That's seems to me odd because, you know, the earlier stage of a language was presumably itself also a language with its own set of history. And so we could just keep going endlessly. So at some point, I think as conlangers, we have to say, okay, you know, we're not going to reconstruct any farther back than that. But that point may be quite far indeed, especially with my personality. Okay, so let's see. So maybe we have terminal, we have conjunctive, or stem A and stem B. We need essentially 6 stems if we're going to replicate the system that classical Japanese had. We don't have to, but I thought it was a good enough as good of a place to start as any. So the terminal conjunctive could be just initial and final stress. Maybe then we start adding some suffixes. So we could do something. I don't know. What could we do for this? We could do something like he. We could do something like. I'm just going to put some random stuff in here, and then we're going to see how it looks and change it. For the realis form, which is used for these, for the conditional one and the concessive form. And I'm sorry, things have gone off the screen there. My apologies. There's never enough space here. Sorry, I hope I'm not obstructing things with my own camera there either. There's just not enough real estate. Yes, okay. So let's start adding some of these. So let's take ya as our example, and we can say yata. And basically wherever we have a schwa, we can reconstruct this under specified vowel. This a, which shows up. So this is a weak verb. I don't know if we want to keep this this sort of Germanic sounding verbal terminology, but good enough for now. And this means did. And then we have the predicative form, which is just ya. Does this? The predicative form is the form that's going to come at the end of every sentence. And then we need to reconstruct conditional 2. And so this is going to have to go on to, let's say that this is final stress with he. And let's say we can say this is initial stress for some reason. I'm just going to distribute these stress patterns out like candy. We have another initial stress. We have final stress. And fa. And we need suffixes for the attributive. Or maybe we don't. Maybe attributive and terminal sound the same. What else? Oh, hey, Violet. Yes, it's kind of like in Spanish how you have these different verbal stress patterns based on the accentuation pattern of the ancestor language, or in Spanish, in this case, Latin. So we need something for this, and maybe it's going to be something like yeah. And for the attributive, we'll just leave it. For conjunctive, it's just final stress. Or maybe ma. That could work. So if we use this as a tentative Yeah, the terminal wording is because Japanese is a verb final language. Predicative is another way I've said it. Fortunately, we are also working with the verb final language, so we won't be lying by calling it terminal. The thing that, okay, so here's a reason why I didn't want to call it predicative, because don't the past tense forms also constitute predication when they're final? I mean, they're also terminal. I don't know. I don't think we have a really good word for it. That's why I think we should just call it stem A. Are vowels going to undergo mutation under stress? Yeah, we could do that, and I kind of want to do that, but I'm conscious of the fact that I'm introducing a lot of changes. So maybe we'll keep that in our minds. I would frankly, I would love to have essentially an ablaut system for protocol. So we have this weird kind of Proto-Indo-European classical Japanese hybrid grammar. And so, when things are under stress, the vowels mutate, and then the stress goes away and becomes regularized in protocol, but you have these strange vowel gradation patterns showing up, which is what we have here. So but we could go farther with that. And I think we probably should. So let's take another look at these. So the Irialis stem would look like y, he, and what's something that takes the C, okwe. Yachiokwe. And this is probably those vowels in hiatus are probably not going to survive untouched, but we can deal with that later. And since this is a final stress, we would have okwa. Yachiokwa. Or maybe, final stress. Although we already have this okwa form for the conditional too, so maybe this deserves to have initial stress. So yachiokwa. And then, sorry, not okwa, tokwa. What am I doing? And then we have afitokwa, which is actually the original form in which we reconstructed this tokwa suffix. So that's kind of cool. And then, so then we can look at the attributive. The attributive is just going to look the same. So attributive has initial stress. Maybe we should just make it have final stress, because we don't want to have too many things with initial stress. So then we have yasu. Yes, we are going to need this. Let's actually use the substantive form. So this is going to turn into yachakwa and afi chakwa. And now we've derived our allomorphy in that suffix. Cool. So substantive takes stem D, has this form. Actually, we can just leave this one as schwa because it's never going to alternate, because we don't have any forms that take penultimate stress yet. And good. Okay. So what else can we do? Let's flesh out the rest of our forms. Wait, no, I made a mistake. I apologize. This tohua is our conditional 1. Conditional 2 is okwa. Interesting. I wonder if there's a story there. Okay, well, my apologies. Okwa. And then we also need ya, ma, tokwa, tohwa, sorry. Viewers on YouTube, you've been like, what are you doing, Colin? For the past few minutes. I get it. I watch videos. I'm doing the same thing. I get it. Okay, so that's good. And then we have afi ma. Oops, and I forgot this one. Afi hi okwa. And afi ma. Tohwa. Yeah, it is. And okay, so okay, I'm catching up on some things. Old Japanese had sandia vowels in coalescence. We can also try that. We can try that. And we've been kind of doing this as well in a later form. So we have this kind of anti-hiatic principle, if you want a fancy name, but this tendency of vowels not to like to just be vowel in two different syllables. That's called being in hiatus. And we tend to create these long vowels, which then show up in the later forms in the descendant languages and do all sorts of interesting things to determine what vowels drop out. You know, in some of the descendant languages, we have schwas drop out when they're unstressed. And so, yeah, that's also a thing. But yeah, I think we're going to try that. We're going to have to come up with a big chart of the vowels side by side and what happens to all of them when they collide, basically like Sanskrit. That will be fun. And then Violet mentions, it is very interesting that only conditional 2 starts with a consonant so far. And it's also interesting, in my opinion, that the consonant it starts with is the same consonant that this past tense marker starts with. That combined with the vowel sandhi rules that are going to coalesce two vowels next to each other may yield something interesting in the future. I am not totally sure. Because this is an initial stress, we do not need to represent it like this because it will always show up as ma. And initial stress fa, we don't have any imperatives, but if we did, they would look like ya fa, maybe something at the end of that, who knows? Although imperative is the only verb form that takes this F stem, so I'm assuming that probably we won't need any additional morphology. Ya fa and then afifa. Yeah. I don't know how much I love these suffixes, afihi, ya, ma. I don't totally love them. I think it might be more fun to do something with the stress instead. Maybe we can do that. Maybe let's take out these. So ya tohua, afi tohua. And what if we said, penultimate stress. So stress in the second last syllable. Get a little bit, let that right parenthesis come in. So then we have ya tohua here because the stress in the pre-proto-language is going to be on to. And let's do the same thing here. We could have penultimate stress and we don't want realis and irrealis to be the same. I think that would be bad. So we can make irrealis keep its suffix, but also have penultimate stress. This is weird. Great. Okay. So that's an interesting paradigm. Of course, the fun will come to in when we apply it to our text, I think. Oh, Violet mentions that, yeah, it's interesting that only okwa starts with a vowel. Yeah. Well, you know, same difference either way. I think we got some cool stuff out of it. Yeah, this is interesting. Spanish has a rule for vos and vosotros forms where the stress is always on the first syllable of the ending. And that is going, well, at least for the vosotros forms, that's going to arise from the stress pattern in Latin, which was set up so that it would always have penultimate stress on those forms. And then one thing led to another, sound changes happen, and we get this pattern in Spanish. I'm not totally sure about the historical development of the vos forms. That'd be an interesting topic for a video. And what else? Yeah, since concatenative morphology is the default type, we have to come up with ways of handling the results of concatenation, which are sometimes that things get jammed together that our phonotactics don't like. And Santi is basically the way to deal with that. And, this is a good question. Anthony writes, since we're talking about stress, are there any reasons why a language with lexical stress might evolve into one with fixed stress? And I can give you a sort of improvised, haven't read anything on the topic answer, which are always the most fun. This is the, this is the pub after the talk level of seriousness, which is what I aspire to on this channel. So I think that there is a certain kind of economy of rule where you have a single stress pattern for a language. And this seems to be a kind of a tractor in language change. On the one hand, to keep things regular, and then on the other hand, to keep things distinct, to keep things that were formerly distinct. This, I don't really know if this is how sound change works. I think that there's a lot of debate as to how sound change works. This is a kind of a partially functionalist view that we're trying to maintain contrasts. But I think that there are good arguments to be made for that kind of approach. So if you have lexical stress, you have all of these representations, you have all of these sort of subsets of the language which behave according to different stress rules, like English. English does have lexical stress, but it has lexical stress in such a way that different pockets of the language, different morphological regions, or behave differently. So we have these kind of noun-verb pairs like record and record, and this is a very widespread pattern in English, and it is kind of rule governed. And you hear people actually start to use this kind of stress shifting morphology to distinguish between nouns and verbs. I think the most interesting thing, one of those is the noun install. Like, you've installed something, so you've done an install of it, which is really cool. So it does seem like these are not just sort of willy-nilly, stress could be anywhere. There are these kinds of islands of regularity within a larger system. So you can imagine that there's a cost of representing this complexity, and there's a pressure towards reducing it if possible in language change. Maybe you could think of it as a filter that a language goes through when it's being acquired by the next generation. It has to pass through. The language has really, exists in the minds of the speakers. And so to be transmitted from one mind to the next generation, there are certain filters that the language passes through, which cause certain characteristic patterns of language change. Delightful. Okay, yes, and then there's talk of French etymology in here. This is the historical phonology of French is extremely fascinating. I have a little not so little spreadsheet that I'm working on. To try and understand it better, but it's a monumental task. French over its history just likes getting rid of unstressed vowels. Okay, so I think we are now at the point where we should, I guess we should do a little cut for YouTube because we've, I've been talking for a while. So why don't we do that? I'm going to do a little cut for YouTube and go back to the full screen. And thank everyone who's been watching on YouTube in the future for watching, and do the usual encouragement to like and subscribe and all of that good jazz, because this is there will be much more of this to come. This is a very long-term project, working out this language, and it's like an addiction for me. So yeah, expect to see more of it. Okay. All right. I'm not going to be doing too many elaborate intros today because we don't have the time. So I'm just going to go straight in. For those who are coming from YouTube, this is going to be video, 9 or 10 in the series. So you probably should just watch it from the start, or else things will be kind of confusing. Okay. Yeah. But we're going to go in. So what we've just done is sort of reorganize the verb system of the proto-language according to this system where we have different verb stems. We have 6 different verb stems in the proto-language, which are each characterized by a different stress pattern for some verbs. And this explains why we have the alternations that we have. So given that we've done all of this work and we have at least some of these charts filled out, we can go back to our text and sort of revamp it. So I think that's probably what we should do next. I was going to do some case today, but I don't know if I'll have time. Okay, well, let's just see. And where is our text? Can we see all of this adequately? Okay, well, maybe I will just insert some rows above here. This is called technological excellence. There we go. Okay. So let's go to work. So on the first, this isn't our proto-text. This is our proto-text. I have to do that again. There we go. All right, put in some little notes to self here. One, I've been wanting to get rid of this reduplicative plural in the proto-language for a while. I don't know why, but I just do. Just doesn't feel in keeping with the vibe of the proto-language. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to change quoquo to quota. Okay, so that's good. The black-like coal raven gave an eye of ill intent to the swan because her feathers were as white as the sun. To be properly SOV, this clause should be earlier in the sentence. So you can see the whole note, but that's what it says. So let's take sequopataufo, the black like coal, sequopataufo fasanasu huasaqua, excuse me. Okay, so that's the subject. And then we need something like, I'm going to just split this into more rows. Swan give. Yeah. So this is meant to be a kind of a dative. I'd rather have a proper dative case. So maybe we are going to be able to do some case in this video. I had an idea to take the, so I'm going to go over here, boop, boop, boop. Here's our case system so far. I've divided it into two types of case. Primary cases, which are in complementary distribution with each other. So, which are in contrastive distribution with each other. So you either have genitive or vocative in the same slot, and then there are these postpositional case forms, which I'm taking as being less tightly related to the noun, and in fact you can stack these case forms on top of the primary case forms. So you can say something like, so we have this. We could say nafia. Nafia is the word for feather. If you want to say like of the feather, you could say something like nafia he ufo. So you can stack these things, but you can only stack postpositional cases on top of primary cases. And it's interesting, and this is another thing that I have mercilessly pilfered from classical Japanese, that the three primary cases, they have the topic marker as another one of them, but I'm not going to go there for this. Nominative, genitive, and vocative. And then our other cases are going to originate from more kind of locative style cases. So the accusative is going to derive from a form which means to go through, and the dative is going to derive from a form which means to go to, which we don't have these forms yet. We should probably make them. And I guess that's our task right now. So let's make them. So I don't think we have either of these verbs. So those of you in the chat, now is your time. Now is your chance to get your word in and help me out with some forms. So I'm going to, well, you can get a sense of the phonology of the language from some of these words that we've been using. I'm taking suggestions. We need a verb form to go to and a verb form to go through. And if you want something, we can adapt it to the phonology. So don't let the existing phonology constrain you. If you have something that you'd like to say, we can make it fit. Kind of like a loan word. Yeah, we're having a lot of morphology. This is I think, yeah. Did I title the stream Morphology Speedrun? We're speeding through it. We're getting stuff done. This is very, very near and dear to my heart. My own training is as a morphologist, awkwardly perched between syntax and phonology, just kind of trying to make sure I don't lean too far in either direction. This is my favorite stuff. I love coming up with systems that were regular at one point, and then sound change has turned into the kinds of things that language learners have nightmares about. Thank you, Ukwe, to go through. So, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in. Give us our nice little go through. And that's actually probably a good size for an accusative case. And I really like that. That just feels accusative to me. I don't know. All right, while you're thinking, and I know there is a delay in the chat, so while that's underway, I'm going to go through and I'm going to go back to our text, and I'm going to start making a few changes. And again, that's not the correct text. Okay. So the black light coal raven, that's all that this says right now, gave an eye of ill intent to the swan, because her feathers were as white as the sun. Okay, so I think this has to be we have to have Payawi here. Okay, speakers of SOV languages, how would you express this? Where would you put this clause? Because her feathers were as white as the sun. Would you do something like the raven, black like coal, gave the evil eye to the swan, and this was done, or it was because her feathers were white that this was done, something like that. Something like, because her feathers were as white as the sun, he did this. Or it did this, I guess in this case. Something like that. Or would you try and put it somewhere inside this first sentence? Like the black like coal raven to the swan because it was blah 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 gave the evil eye. Is that more what you would do? Let's try that. So we still need a dative. We need a dative case. Let's get some more space and let's take our verb phrase and put it right down here at the end. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so it looks like Hindi allows these dependent clauses to come after, whereas Japanese will not. So how do we, I guess, who do we want to, which side do we want to do? I think because we've been so inspired by classical Japanese, let's go down that route. But I think in Eustamia, let's use the Hindi style setup. So we have this meaning ill intent I gave. In fact, this is passed as a suffix. Gave the evil eye. Yeah, Violet, in Eustamia, we are using quo as a or ku, I guess it is, as a dative marker. So it comes from this verb to give. But I'd like the case marker in the proto-language to be something different. And then we have this cool effect where, you know, the proto-language has a completely different sort of case system than the descendant language, and then we can have some cool cases where there are fossilized forms that work in the proto-language and blah, 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 this kind of thing. Okay, yes, I'm going to attempt it then. I'm going to attempt doing it the Japanese style. So, the black light coal raven to the swan. So we need this dative marker. We don't know what it's going to be yet. Or maybe we just put this at the very start. That's what we should do. So start out with the swan. Start out with the swan. Because the swan swan's feathers more as, so swan, genitive, payawi ch, nafia masafaufo, sun-like, white, do because. Okay, this works. And then we don't need this anymore. So payawicha nafia masafa ufo masala yatohwa sakwopeta ufo fasanasu huasakwa sasukasu wana quota, more or less. But we don't now have a representation of the swan in the main clause. So we can say something like, just use a pronoun, which our pronoun is so, and then we need the dative marker on that. Verb like raven, third dative. Okay, that's more or less, I think, what we want. Now we have to apply our new verbal system to this. So I'm going to go over here and look up what we have here. Oh, it's so little real estate. Okay. And this is even a pretty big screen too. I mean, it's not that big, but it's big enough, right? Okay, so it's going to be, what is this? This is because. So because is going to be this tohua, which we are calling conditional one. So this is a conditional one form. Conditional one takes the E stem. The E stem has penultimate stress. So then we have ya tohua. Great. Doesn't need any changing. Okay. And then let's look at this one, quota. Well, because this is just a monosyllable with an O vowel, we don't need to worry about anything but the fact that it's final stress, so quota. So the whole sentence, and I'm just going to make something up for this indirect object because I need it. So this is 2, 4, the dative marker. We can say it's going to be something like, let's take a look at the lexicon. Maybe something like maybe nam, so that we have a bit of different consonants showing up in these endings. Nama. So then, going back to the text, we can say so nama. And then we have the full first sentence. Payawicha nafia masafaufo masala yatohwa sakwopetaufo fasanasu huasakwa sonama sasukasu wanakwota. Cool. Cool. Okay. What is next? Oh, I guess the one thing, we don't know if it's going to be quota or quota because we don't know if it's a strong or a weak verb. So I've just made it into a weak verb here. So I guess you're a weak verb now. Enjoy it. We know ya is a weak verb as well. All right, let's move on a little bit. Osasakwa. And this is, actually should be osasakwa, because this is our, where is it? Substantive form, stem D, final stress, unless it's a strong verb. Is it a strong verb? No. So osasakwa, idea, or a seeing, literally. Osasakwa sunaquotasu. And here we have another verby form, sunaquota. This is the attributive form, takes the D stem, which has final stress. So whether this is strong or weak, it'll still be the same. Sinaquota su. Sinaquota su in the pre-protocol. In protocol, sinaquota su. Great. Okay. And now we need to use our new dative, kolinama. Osasa hakwa sanaquota su kolinama memanata. So we're assuming that this is going to be a strong verb that in pre-protocol had its stress fixed on one of these root syllables, just to mix it up. So an idea came to the foolish bird. Oh dear, this is a long sentence. So kona fetu alupa. I want to deal with this and issue because I hate the way that we're doing and right now. I would rather have a verb form. So I'd rather have a case marker to express nominal and, so, ham and cheese. So that would be a kind of a comminative form, meaning with. And then I would also like to have a verbal form, which we can call continuative, which again I've mercilessly and shamelessly stolen, to give us the and that joins verb phrases together. And so we need an ending for that. So that's going to be something. Or maybe we don't need an ending. Maybe it can have no ending. It does have some distinct morphology, which is final stress. But it would be, I think we should have an ending. Let's have an ending. So I'm going to leave that in for the chat to pick up and give suggestions for if the feeling strikes you. Swim and descend and in the water growing plants eat. Chupa. Love it. Alupa chupa. Nakula chupa. I'm doing the stress pattern of the pre-protocol language because we know it's going to have final stress. And so by not changing alupa, we're saying that there is probably no stress shift. This is a strong verb. If we wanted a stress shift, what would we do? We'd find one of these. We could potentially find one of these as, and we'd have justification for turning it into a schwa, if indeed the representation of alupa was this underspecified vowel. When it loses stress, actually it couldn't be that. It would have to be just like this. When it loses stress, it would go to alupa, chupa. But never mind. Let's not complicate our lives unnecessarily. Maybe only a very limited selection of verbs are going to have this pattern. That stands to reason. Okay, so then palawe. So kwana fetu alupa chupa nakwala chupa palawa ma sunafie su sahwana fahwesu payawi ufo somane wenato okwa. So originally, in Eustamia we have this this kind of like modal verb, which comes from the word meaning to want, wenato in proto-language. Wenato gives us this kind of like would, this irialis marker in Eustamia, but we don't need it in the proto-language because we already have an irialis conditional, which is the counterfactional conditional to okwa. So we can just put in somane okwa. And it's a C, penultimate stress, no change. Great. Ahwa. Oh, okay. Yeah. Next thing we need to add is going to be ahwa. Maybe. So let's put that in. Maybe negative? I don't know. Okay, so let's take stock. So kwana fetu alupa chupa Nehualahupa, Palawema, Sonafiesu, Sahwena, Fahwesu, Payawi Ufo, Somaneokwa. Good. That's the conditional. Now we have the result. Tenafia. Okay, so we don't have ta anymore. We have socha. That's an old form that we did away with. So this is now third person genitive. Socha nafia payawi ufo. Masala lafu wenato. Okay. So we, I think, do not need this wenato here. We can just use our terminal predicative form. Lafu, done. And we also, I think, need masala to be some sort of, we need a continuative form here, I think. Maybe we don't. I don't know. I'll leave that for now. Let's just leave it as a bare form at the moment. Masala lafu and socha nafia payawi ufo. Interestingly, so I've made a little note about this, which you can't totally see because, in fact, you can't see it at all because it's totally off the screen. But here's what the note says. This is a good opportunity for us to practice case stacking because we have his feathers would turn white like the swan's feathers, really. We've elided this word feathers, but we're not saying the feathers would turn white like the swan. We could, but we're not. What we're saying is the feathers would turn white like those feathers of the swan. So we can do swan genitive like. So instead of payawi ufo, we have payawi cha ufo. And now we're going to have to deal with these vowels in hiatus at some point. That maybe we'll do that next time. But we got to return to the actual descendant language. I don't know. We'll see. So socha nafia payawi cha ufo masala lafu. Good. Done. And then okapina so kelaya pa satanesima homasu socha anatochakwa umasata. So we need to make sure all of these things are obeying our rules. I think we don't have to do any changes here because homasu to be or which is. So he left his home in the woods and fields. Literally, because of this, it woods and fields in, which were, so his home, which was in the woods and fields, left. Oh, it is hard to translate word for word SOV into SVO word order. So he left his home, which was in the woods and fields. Let's take this and deal with our pa issue first. So now pa is a case marker on the noun. We can call it the comitative case, the with case. Okapina so kelayapa setanasima homasu. Homasu, attributive, takes the D stem, final stress, no worries. Homasu, socha anatochakwa. Chakwa, substantive, takes the D stem, final stress, but is this a weak or a strong verb? It is, I guess, a strong verb, so we leave it, anatochakwa. This is getting complicated. I think people are going to need to study this for years if they want to learn it. Good. Excellent. The more complicated, the better to a certain... There is a point of diminishing returns, of course. All right. So then what else do we have to do? I realize we're a bit over. We're a bit over our time. I'm not super pressed for time today, but I'll wrap things up. And we have another form here. Oh, apologies because you couldn't see that little... There we go. Everything's good. Okay, so then we have this... So he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. So this is not the end of a sentence. So we need a continuative form. So instead of umasata, we have umasahupa. We can just say and then we get rid of this pa. And now we have this interesting thing here. Fa. To, in order to live in the fields and on the lakes and in the marshes. And I think we need to change this into a suffix. And what are we going to do? We are going to use our, I'm going to move us over here. We are going to use our presumptive form, which we haven't made yet, but we just had a great suggestion for some morphology. So it's going to be agua. I'm in love with these labialized velars. These are great. So let's put that in. Agua. So instead of to, this is the verb form that means let's, or something will probably happen, or there's an intention. And we are going to, I don't know if this is how it's used in classical Japanese, but this is how I'm going to use it. Again, there's nothing more dangerous than someone who just knows just enough to take something and just wildly misinterpret it. But that is me. That's the name of my game. And so what are we going to do? We are going to take this presumptive form, presumptive penultimate stress. Fine. And we are going to say, he flew down in order to live. So mane ahue naquela sapata. Good. Okay. Yeah, case marker stacking is a thing in Japanese, which is somewhat where I got this idea from. I am absolutely without shame in rifling through languages for grammatical inspiration. But hopefully I'm being at least honest about it. And I think the nice thing about that is you can then go and, if you've seen the way that I've implemented something, you think it's interesting, you at least know whereabouts to look to find out more about it and see if you want to replicate it yourself. Okay, so I think that's a good point in that sentence. How much more do we have to do? Not much more. Let's just finish. So con afetu palana sefia. But although he washed and washed all day long, he day and night follow wash. This seems more like that Eustamia call grammar. We have this durative marker down here, which is done by reduplication. So let's say that we can use reduplication to form duratives here. So Sefia. So quando fetu Sefia. But though he washed all day long and almost drowned himself at it, so we're going to need this follow suffix at the end, and which means that we're going to need a continuative here. Hupa. And we get rid of the pa. Almost by this. Oh, we have an instrumental. Cool, I forgot. Huino lomu. And we have, let's just put that in. Always document. Oop. Always know your shortcuts. Yeah, okay. Back to the matter at hand. Huino lomu wanesiya umefalo. Let's just check to make sure everything makes sense. This is our concessive. It takes the E stem, which is penultimate. Great. I'll probably back off on a lot of this ablaut sort of thing and make it a feature of only a very few common verbs, so I don't have to keep looking and seeing you know, what syllable the stress will have fallen on. But good. Socha nafia sehuama ya seka sekata. They remain black. And I think we cannot have this and just standing at the start of the sentence. So let's just give this that to be thus suffix. And then afihupa, which is a way of saying and thus. And so he already sofa ya ake makalata. So he learned that he was already good. This ake is the complementizer for adjectives that we made before. I haven't talked about that in this verbal system chat today, but yeah, we'll talk about it another time. We may change it, we may not. The important thing I think to know is that I would like the this complementizer to attach to the terminal form, because I believe this is what happens in Japanese. Which I think that's or in modern Japanese. So if you have a form like I know that so and so is eating an apple. Lucy, I asked you about this earlier. I don't know if I should have been bothering you when you were prepping for the stream. But yeah, it's my understanding based on my shoddy investigation is that it takes this final form if you were to put a sentence in that structure. So he learned that he was already good. It would take the what were we calling it? The terminal, the predicative form in that internal clause. So let's make that happen. Terminal has initial stress, no suffix, so ya, uka. Okay. And with that, I think we've done some good work today. I'm going to scoot myself back here because today is a bit of it's not the full 2-hour stream, but hopefully we at least got some good conlanging in, and not too much shy of 2 hours. Just we take what we can get, and I think what we can get is limited right now by my ability to sit still or stand still in one place for a long period of time. I was recovering from a back injury, and so yeah, I tell you, sitting down is an extreme sport. But anyway, thank you all so much for joining today. You don't need to hear my tale of woe. This has been a lot of fun. I've been thinking about this language a lot, and I am very, very strongly tempted to go down the route that who was it that mentioned it? Who was it that was it? I'm going to look up. I'm going to make sure I give the credit where credit is due. Violet, yes. Are vowels going to undergo mutation under stress? I think they should. I think we may need to make this system more extreme, but at the same time, how extreme do we really want to go? How extreme do you want me to go? Maybe I'll say that. How extreme do you want me to go? I'm going to stick around for another few minutes to get your opinions on that, because we can keep going back into the past, or we can start to go into the descendant languages. Really, it's whatever you want and whatever seems like fun. So if there are particular things, let me know. You don't have to let me know now. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments. And yeah, let's just keep making languages together. This is a lot of fun. Okay. All right. So I will be back next week, and we're going to be doing, I think, probably more of the, definitely more conlanging. And we are going to be doing, we might do a little more classical Chinese here and there. We might talk a little bit about some linguistic topics. I've had some interesting suggestions and really cool discussions in the Discord. By the way, if you're not part of the Discord, there is a link in the description of this video on YouTube for you to go check it out. There's some cool conlanging work being done in there, and some really cool people. Many of whom are in the chat today. So hi everyone. Yeah, so some cool things came up on Discord that I think we could talk about. So I don't know. I don't have a firm plan yet, but a lot of it's going to be conlanging. I think that seems to be, I'm not one of these people who chases every little tiny number that any graph dashboard shows you, but it seems to be the thing that that people like the most. So, and I also like it. So good match. IPA input and sound change applier might be helpful. Yeah, we could do the sound change applier. We could use a sound change applier. The problem with the sound change applier is that they tend to be pretty bad at rules that involve stress or super segmentals of any kind. So as long as you have strict segmental phonology and local changes, they're great. It's very hard to handle things beyond this. Maybe there are sound change appliers I don't know about. And actually a cool idea might be to do a kind of roundup of sound change appliers. I actually have an article on word generators, Conlang word generators on my blog, where I sort of went through all of the word generators that I could find and gave a sort of what's best for what, who should use which one, kind of a roundup review kind of thing. So maybe something about that for sound change appliers is in order. And if anyone knows of a cool, spiffy new sound change applier that does handle things like super segmentals, stress, tone, these sorts of things, I'm all ears, because I don't know if I should show you this because it's just weird. But no, it's not weird, but it's great. It's my work in progress French, Latin to French sound change spreadsheet. I'll show you because I have no shame. It's very much a work in progress, so don't cite it or anything like that. And I don't even know if we're going to have enough screen real estate to do this. I teased this on Twitter, I think a week or two ago. I'm going to put myself back in the side. Yeah, it's this kind of thing, and it's just chaos right now. I have some citations for various things, and I have some test cases going over here. Yeah, I attempted to do some of this on the sound change applier on actually like 4 or 5 different ones, and you can see the sort of, where is that? I thought I could have sworn I had a column with the rules I tried to make. Who knows? Maybe I hid it. This is the hidden column. Yeah. So here's the evidence that I have been trying. I forget which sound change applier this was for, but I was just not able to make it work with all of the kinds of changes that need to happen based on stress and things like that, and vowel length. And so we dream about new things and cool new technologies. So if anyone is of the technical persuasion and wants to devise such a sound change applier, please do. I'll be the first to beta test it. But yeah, this has been something I've been sort of working on for the past few weeks and trying to get a nice place to put all this together, mainly because I want to conlang and I want to make some branches off of like Old French or Gallo-Romance or something like that. Mainly that's the reason. But I also thought it would be interesting for other people, and it could be a resource that I guess, do you open source a spreadsheet? I don't know if that applies, but that's the kind of idea. Lexically SC. Okay. I'm gonna write a note down about that right now. Lexically SC. Cool. Okay. Well, maybe my prayers will be answered. Thank you everyone so much. This has been a lot of fun. And yes, I will see you again next week. I think next week we're probably going to do the same split Tuesday, Thursday thing. We probably won't have the same tight time limit as we did on Tuesday. So yeah, the more the merrier. Tell your friends, tell your dog, tell your dog's friends, all of these good things. All welcome. All right. And with that, I will bid you good afternoon, evening, morning, midnight, wherever you are, whatever time it is, I bid you a good one. See you.